Shalom. Call halal Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai Bahasham Wakaha Kwadash. Double honors into the apostles, double honors into the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers doing this work in truth and sincerity, risking their lives and their freedom to do so now more so than ever. To the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners among the heathen that look like those heathen. This is not a black thing. And to the few Akwaf that are listening and learning, to you I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago. You have to remember that the Israelites, the true people of the Lord, were scattered among all nations upon the earth, and they're going to come looking like all people. All right, so they can't be classified as black nor white. They're the Israelites. All right. Now it is true that the so-called Negro in America, primarily in the West Indies and in America, primarily make up the house of Judah. But the house of Judah is scattered among all people, including these people you see on the screen. All right, and that's just the house of Judah. That's not the rest of the northern kingdom, the rest of Israel. But with all that aside, because it has to be said, because Esau, Edom, who primarily are the people you see on the screen, Amalekites posing as our people, they're the ones who created this whole racial aspect of black and whiteness, which is a complete and total false social construct created for white superiority and to control information, which I will touch on this book and how, this, what you're about to see in these two videos. Well, this goes back a long time. All right. And this book is about, the establishment of the Jewish neighborhoods in Chicago and all the Jewish gangsters that were involved with Al Capone, the Irish gangster, the Irish, mafia, et cetera, et cetera. And that those neighborhoods started, I think, 1838 all the way up until the 1900s. But we're going to touch on that briefly at the end. But first, we're going to go to this video with Scott Ritter. And it's called Scott Ritter, Israel is losing the war and the IDF won't survive. All right. Iran's counterattack. And all this is prophecy because these people don't, look, when the Israelites go back to the land of Israel, they will dwell in peace and safety alone and be ruling over all the people in the earth. All right. In righteousness. These people hold a strong hold over the earth through information, basically through the control of information and through the military might of America, which they pretty much control lock, stock, and barrel. All right. So without any further ado, first, you know what? Let's read an appropriate scripture before we get started, which comes out multiple times, but it's so fitting to the times and to all the information which, circumvents or circulates around these Amalekites. But this is Deuteronomy 33 and 29, and it reads, Happy art thou, Israel, who is like unto thee, O people saved by Yahweh, the shield of thy help, and who is the sword of thy excellency, and thy enemies shall be found liars unto thee, and thou shalt tread upon their high places. Exposing their corrupt lies at the same time when they run and control the media, that's treading upon their high places. And they control the media that this is on. These two videos I'm about to show you are on YouTube. All right? And these two videos will still be up. They may attack and delete mine, but the information that I'm using is all their own information. So there's nothing anything about this. This is just a sharing of information. As a matter of fact, the attack on my video would be proof that what I'm saying is actually true. If it were not true, just laugh about it and make fun of it and do sound bites, but probably not going to do that. But here we go.
Or for Iran and Israel. Israel's already got its tail in the sling. I mean, there's international outrage against what's going on. They just ran an operation at at the big hospital in Al Shifa, I think it is.
Yeah, Shifa. Yeah.
Yeah, the one that was supposed to have all this tunnel network, and Israel came back now, surrounded it, attacked it. It's curious how the West spins this. So first of all, the Israeli Defense Force, not a single civilian was killed. The perfect military operation. I mean, to listen to some of their senior officers, this was the equivalent of Stalingrad or D-Day. I mean, this is how significant this fight was. But then you listen to the Israeli Defense Force, and some reporting's come out in Haaretz about this. They say don't believe the numbers about Hamas fires because we simply drew a circle around Al Shifa and said anybody who's in it dies. If you're in it, you're considered to be Hamas. So we're going to kill you. It's automatic death. We don't mess around. We kill you and we count you as Hamas. So when Israel starts throwing out body counts, these are heavily inflated accounts. And then Israel also misrepresents, responsibilities. A security officer for the hospital is called a senior Hamas, regional coordinator. I'm not saying that Hamas can't dual hat. I'm not saying that Israel is wrong, but I mean, they need to do better. We know that the Israelis just make stuff up. They haven't been honest about any aspect of this operation. And they went into the hospital and committed mass murder and butchery. They executed. Some numbers was 147 guys got executed. I mean, it's a big number. There's just the kind of stuff that, in and of it,
all while screaming the victim. Hence the reason why I call them the victim villains. This is Luke 12:2. For there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known.
Itself would normally be headline generating global condemnation, but it's just become so run of the mill. I mean, we're at the point now in the global community where, everybody's on the side of Palestine, but I mean, when these atrocities are thrown in front of you day after day after day, there's just this exhaustion level that comes up. And it's the same thing with these aid workers. These aren't the first aid workers that Israel killed, and they won't be the last aid workers Israel killed. These ones are...
If you've been under a rock, the Israelis bombed and killed British citizens who were bringing food and aid to starving people that are dying under heavy gunfire and heavy bombarding of rocket fire, etc. All right, and they were in marked vehicles showing who they were, and they were destroyed anyway. And the only reason I can see is they are angry that you're trying to feed, these people that we consider our enemy. All right, but this is a helpless enemy that has no way to fight, and are dying horrible deaths. And starvation and disease is one of them because they're being, all supplies and medical is being cut off from them. And the people that go to help them, it's just like, whoops-a-daisy, sorry, thought you were Hamas. And that's the end of it.
Different because they were nice people, had high-profile videos, they're foreigners. They carry the passports that normally don't get you killed. But Danny, I mean, maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe I've just become too cynical. But I'm sort of guessing that this time next week, we're not going to be talking about these aid workers because Israel's going to have done something else. They're going to go into Rafah. The second they go into Rafah, no one's going to be talking about aid workers. Nobody's going to be talking about Shifa Hospital. No one's going to be talking about anything but Rafah. And in Rafah, we're going to be talking about the same thing, which is damage control by the United States. The whole world saying, we're so mad, but they're not going to do anything.
No, because what they'll do is they'll just turn the page, right? In the media, they'll turn the page and they'll focus on the next story. And people will forget about it.
Genocide has been declared by the International Court of Justice. Israel's been put on notice to stop. A resolution was passed at the Security Council of the United Nations telling Israel, cease fire. But there's no consequences for Israel's continued, thumbing their nose at this. This is the real story.
None whatsoever, because, hey, look, the Israelis are running things. All right? Benjamin Netanyahu, J-O-O, not a J-O-O. All right? This dude is completely in rulership in America via the land of Israel. And if you can't see that, it's because you don't want to see that. All right, American policy in every way, form, and fashion is adjusted to serve his interests. Point blank, period. There is no argument on the subject matter. All right, he's like Haman. Matter of fact, let's read about Haman a bit before we go to the next video. Let's go to not Second Ezra, but the book of Esther. 3 and 8. All right, and it reads, and Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, there is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all the people. Neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore, it is not for the king's profit to suffer them. And that's basically, Amalek's take on us. Haman represents these lettered organizations that support, small hat ideology. They get to pick and choose what's hate speech, because with these people, truth is hate speech, history is hate speech, evidence of who's the Israelites is hate speech. Putin just showed you the images of the true saints that predate all the Renaissance art that they like to use to make a false claim. And basically they're playing the role of Ammon. Let's read a little bit more about Ammon. All right, this is because it's all gonna fall apart for Ammon, the same way it's gonna fall apart for Amalek, because the scriptures clearly tell you that its end would be without honor, and they have no honor right now. They're really being, they really are being shunned by the world community. All right, and they're going to draw everyone into these wars, just as the scriptures say. But this is Esther 7 and 10. And it reads, do I want to read 10 yet? Yeah, I started verse 9. And it says, in Haborna, one of the chamberlains said before the king, behold, also the gallows are 50 cubits high, and these gallows all represent all the traps that they're setting up, the FEMA traps and the this and charagma and into your skin and all these other things, all right, that they're setting up. The hate speech, how they can control. That law that just got passed in New York to where they could just, I forget the name of it, but there's something that was just passed in New York where they could take you off into a FEMA camp without proof, without evidence of anything. All right. But it says, behold, also the gallows are 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai being an Israelite, and his people. All right. Because they wanted this to go on across, because war is going to be declared on the Israelites. As you can also see that the northern kingdom is being made to be terrorists. All right, they're really demonizing them right now. All right, they're being made out to be the new face of terror here. All right, and it says, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai, which was the king's wrath, which was the king's wrath pacified. So all the traps that E is laying, Amalek being at the head of that, it's all gonna fall right back upon them. All right. Matter of fact, let's go to one more scripture in Esther. Let's go to Esther 9:28. I read like 28. Slovakia. Just looking over it. Actually, no, we're gonna leave that one alone. Really no need to read that one. You know, I read 25. All right. This is Esther 9 and started in the 24, pointed in 25. Because Amon the son of Hamadatha, the Agagite, all right, the enemy of all the Jews, and see Amalek, you know, go pursuant to Ezekiel 36 and 5, the Amalekites now are in the land of Israel. All right. Prophecy said that they would take that land. They said, aha, even the ancient high places are ours. You know, this Ezekiel the 36th chapter. All right. They've subscribed the land to themselves. Balfour Declaration. It says, because Amon the son of Hamadatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, a lot to consume them and destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that the wicked device which he devised against the Judeans should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. So it's all going to reverse on Esau, Edom. And you can see that as a more and more exposure, as he's being exposed for his wrongdoing. So let's play this next video, what really happened on October 7th, by Double Down News, DDN. All right. So let's hear let's listen to the report, hear the receipts. So we're going to play about 5-6 minutes of this. And let Psalm 64 and 8, you know, because this guy's an Edomite as well, do it, you know, be a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right.
Investigative unit, we've conducted a forensic, meticulous examination of the events of October the 7th. We uncovered very real crimes committed by Hamas and others. But I think what was perhaps most significant were the crimes we discovered that did not happen. And it's hugely concerning that these revelations have been virtually entirely ignored by the Western press. What's extraordinary is the Israelis were aware of the plans. Hamas were actually training quite openly for this operation, and they were actually placing the training videos online so anyone could view them. On the very night of October the 7th, before dawn, spotters along the fence are reporting back to headquarters, and the head of Shin Bet and the head of military intelligence take this seriously enough that in the middle of the night they're up and talking to each other. They conclude it's just another training exercise. And what is extraordinary is that they don't even raise the alert level to number 1, you know, the most basic alert level that have made a huge difference. And they don't do that, which means that when Hamas bursts through the fence at 6:30 in the morning, they catch many of the defenders in their beds. I mean, you can see many of the soldiers are killed in their beds. Hamas had anticipated most of their fighters would be killed trying to get through the fence. In fact, only a small number were killed trying to get through the fence. They were as much taken by surprise as anyone by the performance of Israeli intelligence and the Israeli military. Crucially, also, they were taken by surprise by this very large music festival that was taking place, which they don't seem to have been aware of. Having overrun the military bases, the game plan was to grab hostages and take them back. And they do this on a large scale, but they also clearly kill very large numbers of unarmed civilians as well.
Thinking would start cutting carbs. I need to drop my belly fat.
Fuck. Ah.
If you want to drop.
The Israelis were then extraordinarily slow to respond. Now they scrambled.
So this music festival is going on, even though the intelligence was aware. So it almost seems if they wanted these civilians to die, so they'd have an excuse to commit just genocide, which they do. But then they go on to fabricate the stories after the fact. So let's hear them.
Apache helicopters, but there's no ground control. It's pretty clear that in the chaos, some hostages at least were hit by Apache helicopter fire. We've identified 27 people who were clearly taken hostage, taken captive, and were taken away from their homes, but never made it to the fence, died somewhere between their homes and the fence. There's a fair chance that a number of them were killed by Apache helicopters. Within the kibbutzes, we've identified 18 people who were pretty much certainly killed by the police and the army as they arrived. 12 of them a specific incident in kibbutz Be'eri, where you have a large number of gunmen, around 40 gunmen, holed up in a house with 13 hostages. A tank is brought in and opens fire on the house. There are 2 survivors from this incident, which is why we know about it. There may be other incidents we don't know about because everyone was killed, but there are 2 survivors from this who spoke to Israeli media. There's a common sense thing. You just have to look at the scale of the destruction, and it's clear that 1,200 men armed with rocket-propelled grenades and machine guns did not do all of this. The Hannibal directive, which was something that was developed in the 1980s by the Israelis, and it was basically to avoid situations where their enemies would capture 1 or 2 or 3 Israeli soldiers and then effectively hold them to ransom. There was one occasion where the Israelis released over 1,000 Palestinian prisoners in return for a single Israeli soldier. So an order was issued whereby they said, it's better that we kill everyone than allow people to be captured. Now, this was supposedly rescinded several years ago, but at midday on October the 7th, the army revived the Hannibal directive, put it into effect. 70 vehicles were hit. At least in some of the cases, everyone in the vehicle was killed.
The Israeli military does not deny the report.
The peculiarity of the days after October 7 is that the Israeli media and subsequently the international media choose to focus not on the very real and extensive crimes that Hamas and others did commit, but on crimes they did not commit. And this had 2 focuses. In the days immediately after, is to do with babies. The most dramatic one is we see an allegation that there were 40 babies killed, many of them beheaded. This is very simple to deal with because we have a comprehensive list of the dead. We know that 2 babies are killed on October the 7th. One is a 10-month-old child who is hit by a bullet fired through a safe room door. The other is a child who dies after an emergency cesarean, a Bedouin child, in fact. Now, any story about babies that does not relate to those 2, and there are a lot of stories about babies, is not true. We know it's not.
Complete and total lies to get international support to commit continuous genocide. That's what happened.
True. This has enormous implications for the other wave of atrocity stories that began very quickly, which is to do with sexual violence, and particularly the Israeli assertion that it was widespread and systematic. To be clear, in the film, we are not saying that there were no rapes on October the 7th. We simply don't know. What we are saying is that there simply is not the evidence. There's not the forensic evidence, there's not the visual evidence, there's not the photographic evidence, and there is not the witness evidence to support the allegation of widespread and systematic rape. The Israelis have this strange system where they farm out the collection of bodies after disasters and terrorist attacks and so on to an organization called Zaka, who are ultra-Orthodox religious volunteers. Who was on television a great deal. He said,
2 piles of 10 children each were tied to the back, burned to death.
You then see a phone call which Netanyahu makes to President Biden, where he repeats this story. In fact, he embellishes it.
They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
When it says thy enemies...
Repeats this story. In fact, he embellishes it.
They took dozens of children, bound them up, burned them, and executed them.
When it says thy enemy shall be found liars unto thee. All right? This man bold-facedly and plain-facedly gets on television and lies continually, daily. All right? Always trying to control the narrative. All right? This is page 119. Let me get a little right so I can see this. And in the book that you see on the screen. And on page 119, second paragraph. And it says, indeed, the Jews moved with purpose out of Maxwell Street ghetto. There was a fit between the geographic mobility on the one hand, the social economic mobility of the other. This upward advancement, coupled with the increase in respectability and relative decrease in American anti-Semitism, corresponded to the decline of Jewish crime and gangsters in the city and its significance in Chicago Jewry. The closing of the ghetto was, in many ways, the end of the Jewish gangsters. Jewish gangsters' newspaper increasingly omitted the religious marker, according to Jewish criminals, became simply gangsters. So they did this to clear their own name. And when you hear about Chicago gangsters, you immediately think of Al Capone and the Irish gangs and the Polish gangs, and not the Amalekites. All right? Call halal Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai Bahasham Rakah Kodash Kwam Yasrala Shalom.